Hi everybody, welcome to Pages and Pores. My name is Robert. I know it's hard to believe, 3 videos in 1 week. Who'da thunk it? If you're just here for my book videos, and this is the first one of these I've made in a while, I'm going to try to post them every Monday. If you are interested in my whiskey videos where I am starting to put together my permanent collection, I'm going to be posting those on Thursdays. And if you're interested in my cycling videos, I'll be posting those whenever I finish my long ride on Saturday afternoon, Saturday evenings. So Monday, Thursday, and Saturday is my intended schedule. We'll see how long I can actually keep that up. And if you have multiple personalities like I do, you can just hit subscribe and all 3 of them will show up in your subscription feed. Or you can filter them out and only focus on the one each week that interests you. It's your choice. But we are here today to talk about some of my recent reads. I have read 5 books so far in March. I'm not going to really spend any time talking about the first one because it was my March classic, which was Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility. I like it. I don't love it. I'm a big Pride and Prejudice fan. Sense and Sensibility for me is somewhere in the middle of her major 6 books. But since then, I've read 4 books in the last 10 days or so. I usually only read 1 or 2 books a week. And so these weekly recaps will probably just cover 1 or 2 books. But since I haven't done one in a while, I figured I would cover the last 4 books, especially since one of them is in the running for my book of the year. And that is the first one that we're going to talk about. Timothy Egan's A Fever in the Heartland, The Ku Klux Klan's Plot to Take Over America, and The Woman Who Stopped Them. Now that subtitle to me is a little clickbaity. It is because of an individual woman that they were stopped, but she didn't actually do it. It was her victimhood that basically brought about the end of the KKK at this particular chapter in history. This is a chapter in history that I was not familiar with. My understanding of the KKK is that it started in Reconstruction, and that's actually true. It started in Tennessee and Georgia, and then spread, especially in the South. And then it kind of died out. Ulysses S. Grant kind of eradicated a lot of the Klan and the power of the Klan early on. And then it went dormant for a while and it started making a comeback in the 20th century. And this book is all about what happened in the 1920s in the Midwest of all places. It's not a pure Southern story at all. A man named D.C. Stevenson, who is a con, a grifter, sounds very familiar in some ways to our current history, and that's true throughout this book. He was born in Texas, grew up kind of in Oklahoma, and made his way to Indiana in the early 1920s, and just kind of invented out of whole cloth a history for himself. He lies about everything. His story constantly changes. But he became extremely powerful as the new representative of the KKK in Indiana and rapidly spreading to the rest of the Midwest, Ohio, Michigan, even Pennsylvania. And it became significantly larger than the KKK ever was in the Deep South. And it was starting to take over politics, where he was getting governors in some states in office. Local politicians were all KKK controlled, and he was seriously trying to get himself into the Senate and to make a run for the White House, and believed very much that he was, as he said on numerous occasions, "I am the law." And so it's a story about how that spread, the tactics that they used, and it's just one of the most horrific reads right now, because the playbook that the KKK was using in the 1920s is exactly the playbook, the same rhetoric, the same tactics, the same fear-mongering that you're seeing right now in the Republican Party. And it is frightening, because except for Stevenson's mistakes that he could have avoided, his personal mistakes that he could have avoided, he might have gotten away with it. He might have made it into the White House. He would not be the first president in the United States that had at least Klan sympathies, if not outright Klan membership. So, terrifying read. Timothy Egan is a brilliant historian and journalist, and this is one of my favorite books that I've read in the last year or two, especially nonfiction. It's just absolutely terrific. Read this, read this, read this. The second book I read is the only fiction book I have in this stack of 4, and it's all of these are current books in the 2024 BookTube Prize. This is The Rachel Incident, and you can tell it's a library book. I have to take this back tomorrow, by Caroline O'Donoghue, and I had to read it from a library book because I couldn't get the publisher to send me one, unfortunately. And this is a book, as the title suggests, about a woman named Rachel. She works in a independent bookshop. She's trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life. Another guy starts working at the bookshop named James, and she instantly falls for him, but it's not necessarily in a sexual way because he's gay, and she knows he's gay, but he won't admit that he's gay. And then they finally end up becoming roommates, and their lives intertwine in really unusual ways. Rachel has a massive unrequited crush on one of her literature professors at university, and so James helps her concoct this event to launch his new book, which is a minor book, at their bookshop as a way of, getting to spend time with him. And it kind of backfires because her professor has, let's say, different inclinations despite the fact that he's married. And so their stories intertwine. Rachel's newfound love is also named James, so she calls him by his last name, Carey. And he comes in and out of her life a couple of different times. It's one of these stories where it's always in and out, off again, on again. It's very much, in some ways, like a Sally Rooney book. And I'm not picking on Sally Rooney. I liked the first book I read by her very much. Did not care for the second one too much because the letters back and forth between the characters just seemed woefully pretentious, and it lost steam for me. But this seems very much like a Sally Rooney book without that pretense and with a whole lot more humor. There's a lot of funny parts in this book. So I liked it. It's not going to make my top 10 list for the year, but I'm glad I read it. And if you like Sally Rooney's stories about men and women, especially young men and women, coming in and out of each other's lives, give this one a try. I think you'll probably enjoy it. The third one I read is also nonfiction, and this is Hilary Mantel's book, A Memoir of My Former Self, A Life in Writing. And of course, Hilary Mantel died in 2022, the author of the Wolf Hall trilogy of Tudor England historical fiction, and the winner of the Booker Prize, I think, for the first 2 books in her Wolf Hall trilogy, and basically every other award she could win. She is a monumental figure in English fiction, especially historical fiction. I have never read her fiction because I've always been intimidated by her Wolf Hall trilogy. They're big, they're impressive. Her writing style can be a little bit dense at times. She's a wonderful stylist, but you can't rush through her writing and get much out of it. The problem I have with this book, and it's a minor problem and it's certainly not her fault, is that this is a book of her collected journalism over the years. And it's not meant to be read as a book where you read one essay after another in a very short span of time. They're meant to be read as they come out, once a week, once a month, however often she publishes them. And I think if I were reading them one at a time, I would have appreciated them a whole lot more than I do reading them so quickly. I read this whole collection in about 4 days, and that's just too fast for this kind of work. I like her style. She can be funny. She can be a little bit of a snob, but sometimes she's funny about being a snob, and I'm okay with that. And I liked the different sections. There's a section in there that's a series of lectures that she gave. There's a section in there on movie reviews. Some of the movies I'd never heard of. They're very artsy films, would not have interested me. But then she'll review films that everybody's heard of, like Goodfellas, and some even lowbrow films. And she kind of likes those. I think it's because it's her way of thumbing the nose at the highbrow people sometimes. But if you like Hilary Mantel's writing, you're going to like the style of this book. I think it's too much to read all in one sitting, because that's not the way these pieces were intended to be read anyway. So that was my only drawback for this book. Now, the one I just finished last night and absolutely also loved is Tracy Kidder's book called Rough Sleepers, Dr. Jim O'Connell's urgent mission to bring healing to homeless people. And I did this combination text and audio book, and Tracy Kidder reads the audio book, and so that's very interesting to hear his voice read his own work. Dr. Jim, as he's called throughout the book, is a Harvard-trained physician, and when he was finishing his residency, a couple of the bigwigs in the hospital, Massachusetts General, sat him down and said, look, we have got a grant to start this new program to try to bring better health care to the homeless population. Will you work with this program for 1 year? You're just committing to a single year. And he kind of felt like he was being pressured, but he also kind of felt like it was a good thing for him to do. So he does it. And the program that he's working out of initially was a bunch of clinics. It morphed into something much bigger than that over the years, where they have a mobile van that goes out and makes rounds to where some of these rough sleepers, people who sleep outside, to bring health care to them, to check up on them as much as anything. And he does that. He learns a lot from the nurses, but he learns more from the actual patients. And the thing that made him so successful in this position is that he took the time to get to know the patients, to listen to their lives stories, to listen to what's wrong with them, to try to find out, what their conditions were, what they needed. And he didn't try to push things on them. So many times, doctors, because they're rushed by the system they're working within, tend to cut off patients from talking too much. They don't listen too well. They know that they've been there for 10 minutes already. They should be on their next patient by now. And so they rush through things. And this kind of population that has a high preponderance of people with mental health issues, you can't do that. They'll shut down and they'll disappear, and you'll never see them again, and you won't be able to help them. So Dr. Jim put together a massive coalition of physician's assistants, nurses, psychiatrists, and built up this great program. And this is a lot of the stories about the patients that he treated over the years. A lot of them die young. They die way earlier than they should. But it's also some of his success stories as well as some of his failures. And he's freely admitting some of the things that he wishes he had done differently. But he's called a saint by most people. He hates that terminology. He doesn't like to be called a saint. But he's a saint. I mean, the man has just given and given and given, and he could have been in a high-paying, very comfortable administrative position within medicine, and he's basically become a minister without the church. He's a minister of medicine. And it's just a wonderful story. It will make you tear up a couple of times. There's some of these stories that will absolutely just break your heart. There's no way around it. But it's a brilliant book. Between the Timothy Egan book and the Tracy Kidder book, this was a hell of a good week for nonfiction for me. Two hugely powerful stories, very different kinds of stories. One will make you incredibly angry. The other one will make you sad, but also hopeful. But beautiful books, very much worth your time. Please go read them. Okay, so that was my month of March so far. Jane Austen's book, 3 nonfiction works, and a current fiction work. And I'm starting a new book tonight. I'm starting R.F. Kuang's Yellowface tonight. So I'm off on some more of my BookTube Prize challenge, my quest to read all 96 books in the BookTube Prize fields this year. I'm about a third of the way through because I had some that I'd already read before the year started. I got a little bit of a head start. I hope you're reading something good. I hope I'll see you again on Thursday and Saturday next week, and then again next Monday, hopefully with another book video. Until then, cheers everybody. Bye.